The leather portfolio sat in my passenger seat like a co-conspirator. I'd checked it 3 times before leaving the house. LLC paperwork, the signed contract with my first client, the business cards that had arrived in their crisp white box last Tuesday. Everything was there. Everything was real. I just needed to say it out loud, preferably before my mouth went completely dry. Rosewood Grill smelled like garlic bread and old money. The hostess led me to the private room my daughter had reserved, and I could already hear them, Megan's laugh, Paul's voice doing that thing where he talks louder when he's trying to impress someone. I shifted the portfolio to my other hand. It wasn't heavy, but my palm was sweating. "Mom!" Megan stood as I entered, pulling me into a hug that smelled like her expensive perfume. She looked polished in a way I'd never quite managed at 32, or 58 for that matter. "You look great. New blouse. Old blouse, new attitude." I smiled, setting the portfolio on the empty chair beside me. Subtle, available. Ready when I was. Paul waved from across the table, a blonde woman beside him already examining the wine list. "Diane, this is Amber." "Amber, my sister Diane." "Half-sister," Karen corrected, arriving in a blast of cold air and irritation. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic on the 405 was a nightmare. No one in this city knows how to merge." I'd stopped correcting Paul about the sister thing years ago. We shared a father, which apparently made me a half-person in his taxonomy. Karen kissed my cheek and collapsed into her seat with the exhausted sigh of someone whose suffering must be immediately acknowledged. "Wine?" Megan was already pouring. "We're celebrating." "Celebrating what?" I reached for my water glass instead, needing something to do with my hands. My promotion came through. Regional director? I didn't want to say anything until it was official, but it's official. She beamed, and I felt that familiar tug, the mother joy that exists independent of everything else. My daughter had worked hard. She deserved this. "That's wonderful, honey." "I meant it. Tell me everything." The waiter appeared, disappeared, reappeared with bread. Amber explained her essential oils business while Paul nodded along like she was describing cold fusion. Karen updated us on her neighbor's tree that was dropping leaves in her yard. Megan detailed her new role, the team she'd manage, the salary bump that made my current income look quaint. I waited for a pause. The portfolio sat there, patient. "So what's new with you, Mom?" Megan asked finally. She was good at remembering to ask. Better than Paul and Karen anyway. This was it. I could feel the words lined up. I started a business. I have an LLC. I already signed a client. I've been taking an online coding boot camp to better understand the tech sector I'm consulting in. "I've been taking a coding boot camp," I said. "Online. Just basics, but it's fascinating how much." Karen's laugh cut through the air like a car alarm. "Mom, come on, act your age." I looked at her. She was smiling, the kind that's supposed to soften the blow. Supposed to say I'm joking, can't you take a joke? "I'm serious," I started, but Paul was already nodding. "Karen's right. You're retiring in what, 2 weeks? This is your time to relax, travel, maybe take up gardening or something." "Gardening." I repeated the word like it belonged to a language I used to speak. "Or book club," Amber offered helpfully. "My mom's in 3 book clubs. She loves it." Megan's hand found mine across the table. "We just mean you've worked so hard for so long. You deserve to enjoy yourself, not stress about learning new things." The concern in her voice was real. That was the problem. They actually believed this was kindness, protecting me from my own ambition, my own energy, my own refusal to shrink into whatever shape they'd decided fit a woman my age. My hand moved to the portfolio. The leather was warm from sitting near the heater vent. Inside were documents that proved I was more than this table believed I could be. Documents I'd been terrified and exhilarated to create. Documents that represented a version of myself I barely recognized, but desperately wanted to become. "You're right," I heard myself say. The portfolio slid back into my bag. "I should just relax." Megan squeezed my hand, relieved. Crisis averted. Mother returned to acceptable parameters. The rest of dinner blurred. They ordered steaks. Karen complained about the dressing on her salad. Paul's phone rang twice, and he answered both times. Amber tried to sell Megan on a lavender diffuser. I smiled at appropriate moments, laughed when expected, and felt myself performing a role I'd perfected over decades. The gracefully aging mother. The woman who'd peaked somewhere in her 40s and was now gently declining into irrelevance, grateful for whatever attention her family could spare. When dessert arrived, a chocolate torte the size of a hubcap that we were supposed to share, I watched them dig in with their forks, carving out territories. Paul took the biggest piece naturally. Karen complained about the sugar content but ate it anyway. Megan took a delicate bite and declared it divine. Nobody asked if I wanted any. They just assumed I'd take whatever was left. I didn't touch it. Something about the metaphor was too on the nose. "Mom, you're being quiet," Megan observed, licking chocolate from her fork. "You sure you're okay?" "Just thinking about retirement," I said, which was true. I was thinking about how the word itself felt like a coffin lid closing, how everyone kept using it like it meant the same thing as death, just slower and with better lighting. "You'll love it," Karen assured me. "My friend Linda retired last year, and she says it's the best thing she ever did. She volunteers at the library now. Very fulfilling." Fulfilling? Another word that meant different things depending on who was saying it. I thought about Patricia's email, still unanswered on my phone, about the consulting proposal I'd stayed up until midnight perfecting, about the 3 other potential clients Janet had quietly referred to me, all waiting to see if I was serious. Linda also started drinking at noon, Paul added, so there's that option. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, perfectly timed, perfectly hollow. When the check came, I reached for it. Old habit. "Mom, no." Megan pushed my hand away. "This is my celebration dinner. I've got it." "Let her," Paul said. "She's regional director now. She can afford us." Everyone laughed. I laughed too, right on cue. My bag felt heavier with the portfolio inside it, like evidence of a crime I'd almost committed. The crime of taking up space, the crime of wanting something for myself that wasn't gardening or book club or sitting quietly while my family congratulated each other. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and watched them leave. Paul and Amber climbed into his truck, already arguing about something. Karen hurried to her sedan, probably late for something else. Megan tapped on my window before getting in her car. "You okay, Mom?" "Perfect, just tired. Get some rest, and seriously, think about what you want to do with all that free time coming up. Maybe we can plan a trip together?" "Maybe." I watched her walk away, her heels clicking on the pavement with the confidence of someone whose ambitions were celebrated, not questioned. My phone buzzed. An email from the client I'd signed 2 weeks ago, the one I hadn't mentioned at dinner, the one my family didn't know existed. "Hi, Diane. Just checking in on timeline for the initial audit. Still planning for next month? Really excited to work with you." I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over the reply button. 3 times I started typing, 3 times I deleted it. Finally, "I'll need to get back to you on timing. Some family things have come up." Family things. As if my family were a natural disaster I couldn't control. As if they were something happening to me instead of people I kept choosing to shrink for. The portfolio sat in the passenger seat like a disappointed friend. I didn't look at it the whole drive home. My kitchen table had become mission control over the past 3 months. Under the pendant light, I spread out the LLC papers again. They looked official and terrifying. All those signatures and seals and legal language that basically said, Diane Forrester is a real business owner who provides real services to real clients. Except I just spent 2 hours pretending none of it existed. The papers were dated 3 weeks ago. I remembered signing them in the attorney's office, my hand shaking slightly as I wrote my name. Janet had come with me, insisted on it. "You need a witness to this moment," she said. "Someone who knows this is a big deal." Janet understood, but Janet wasn't family. Janet hadn't raised me, hadn't watched me grow up, hadn't built an entire identity around me being one particular version of a person. Janet could see me clearly because she had nothing invested in me staying small. I made tea I didn't drink and stood at my kitchen window. My reflection stared back, overlaid on the dark yard beyond. Who was I trying to prove something to? What was I trying to prove? The question sat there, unanswered, while I watched a neighbor's cat cross my lawn. The motion sensor light clicked on, then off. On, then off. Like my courage, apparently. Intermittent and triggered by external forces. I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder I'd labeled New Ventures, a bland title that wouldn't raise questions if someone happened to glance at my screen. Inside were months of work, market research, competitive analysis, financial projections that showed I could actually make this viable if I committed. Testimonials from former colleagues I'd helped over the years, all offering to be references, There was also the business plan. 43 pages that represented every lunch break, every evening, every weekend morning I'd carved out to build something that was mine. I'd written it like I was writing to a stranger, someone who needed to be convinced that Diane Forrester, 58 years old, 2 weeks from corporate retirement, had something valuable to offer. The mission statement still made my chest tight when I read it. Strategic solutions from someone who's actually solved problems. 23 years of turning chaos into systems, resistance into buy-in, and impossible deadlines into delivered results. I'd shown it to Janet once. She'd read it silently, then looked up at me with something like pride. "This is good, Diane. This is really good." "You think so?" "I know so. You wrote it like you believe in yourself." Past tense. I'd written it like I believed in myself. 3 months ago, staying late at the office, riding the high of possibility, I'd believed. Now, sitting in my kitchen with the taste of my family's dismissal still in my mouth, belief felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Sleep didn't come. I lay in bed scrolling through my phone, looking at nothing. At 2 a.m., I got up and read through the client contract again. The woman's name was Patricia. She ran a logistics company her father had founded, and she was drowning in outdated systems and resistant employees. She needed someone who understood legacy infrastructure and human resistance to change. I understood both intimately. "You came highly recommended," she'd said during our initial call. "Janet said you're brilliant and available." Available. The word that could mean free or worthless depending on context. I'd asked her what made her reach out to a consultant instead of hiring internally. There was a pause on the line, then, "Because everyone internal is either part of the problem or too scared to solve it. I need someone who doesn't have a history here. Someone who can see clearly." Someone who can see clearly. I'd like that. Liked the idea that my outsider status was an asset, not a liability. That starting fresh at 58 wasn't pathetic, it was strategic. But that was before dinner, before "act your age" landed like a diagnosis. Morning arrived with the cruelty of all mornings after sleepless nights. The retirement countdown calendar on my fridge announced 14 days remaining. Someone had given it to me as a joke at my birthday party, a paper chain I was supposed to tear off day by day until liberation. I made coffee in the mug Megan had given me 3 Christmases ago. "World's Best Mom," in cheerful yellow letters. Not "World's Best Consultant" or "World's Best Entrepreneur" or "World's Best Person Who Refuses to Disappear Quietly." The irony tasted bitter. So did the coffee, but that might have been my fault. I had a system for getting ready: shower, coffee, toast, news. The same routine for 23 years, the kind of consistency that either meant stability or stagnation, depending on whether you were defending it or escaping it. This morning I broke pattern, skipped the toast, stood in my closet trying to decide who I was supposed to be today. The clothes on the left were my work uniform: structured blazers, professional slacks, blouses in colors that photographed well in corporate headshots. On the right were the weekend clothes, softer fabrics, and elastic waistbands that Megan had started buying me for birthdays. "You'll want to be comfortable in retirement, Mom." In the back, still in dry cleaning plastic, was the outfit I'd bought for client meetings. A blazer that made me look like someone who solved problems instead of someone who created them by aging inconveniently. I pulled it out, ran my hand over the fabric. Put it back. Work was the opposite of home. At work, I was still sharp, still necessary. I led the morning meeting, walking the team through the quarterly projections with the kind of clarity that comes from doing something well for 2 decades. Marcus, the new analyst, had screwed up a formula. I caught it in 30 seconds, fixed it, explained why it mattered. "You're going to be impossible to replace," he said, and I wondered if he knew how true that was. How they'd probably hire 3 people to do what I did. How those 3 people would still mess it up for the first 6 months. "Everyone's replaceable," I said, because that's what you're supposed to say. Modest, self-effacing, aware of your own mortality and professional limitations, but I didn't believe it. Not really. I'd built systems here that would outlast me, trained people who would train other people, solved problems that would stay solved long after my nameplate came off the door. That should have felt like legacy. Instead, it felt like evidence that I could have been doing this for myself all along. Janet found me at lunch, sliding into the seat across from me, with her salad and that look she got when she was about to ask something I didn't want to answer. "How was the family dinner?" "Fine." "Diane." "It was fine. Megan got promoted, we celebrated." And did you mention your tiny little detail about starting a business and signing a client? I focused very hard on my sandwich. Turkey and Swiss on wheat, the same sandwich I'd been eating for 3 years, because the cafeteria staff knew my order and I was too tired to choose something different. The timing wasn't right. Janet put down her fork. The silence that followed was louder than anything she could have said. They told me to act my age, I finally admitted, when I mentioned the coding boot camp. Karen laughed. Paul agreed. Megan was gentle about it, which somehow made it worse. And you let them? Let them what? Shrink you. Janet's voice was matter-of-fact, not unkind. You let them turn you into someone small enough to fit their idea of who you should be at 58. I wanted to argue, but the portfolio in my bag felt like evidence against me. You know what's funny? Janet continued. You taught me to negotiate for myself. When I was scared to ask for that promotion 3 years ago, you literally wrote out my talking points. You role-played the conversation with me. You made me practice saying my worth out loud until I believed it. That was different. How? I didn't have an answer. Or I had too many answers, all of them revealing things I didn't want to look at. That it was easier to advocate for others than myself. That I'd spent so long being what other people needed that I'd forgotten how to need anything for myself. That somewhere along the way, I'd started believing the lie that wanting things at my age was undignified. I just don't want to disappoint them, I said finally. Janet leaned back in her chair, studying me with the kind of directness that made younger employees nervous. Disappoint them how? By having a life? By refusing to become invisible? By acting like you matter? By failing? What if I fail, Janet? What if I tell them about this business and it goes nowhere and they were right all along? Then you fail. So what? So I'll have proved them right. No. Janet's voice was sharp now. You'll have proved that you tried. That you valued yourself enough to try. That's not failure, Diane. That's called being alive. The afternoon crawled. I carried the portfolio everywhere. To meetings, to the bathroom, back to my desk. It became a physical weight, this documentation of a life I was too afraid to claim. Schrödinger's business. Simultaneously alive and dead until someone else knew it existed. At 3:15, I got an email from Patricia. Subject line, quick question about scope. I opened it, my heart rate picking up the way it did when something mattered. She was asking about my background in change management, whether I dealt with family businesses before, whether I understood the specific dynamics of legacy companies where the founders' children were now running things. I did. God, I did. I'd spent 6 years at my last company helping the second generation transition from their father's autocratic style to something more collaborative. I'd mediated between siblings who couldn't agree on strategy, translated between old guard employees and new hires, built bridges between what worked 30 years ago and what would work now. I wrote back immediately, detailing my experience, sharing a case study I'd developed, offering to send references. My fingers moved fast, certain. This was the version of myself who knew what she was doing, who had value, who wasn't apologizing for taking up space. I hit send and felt something shift, just slightly, just enough. At 4 o'clock, my phone rang. Karen. Hey, I need a favor. Not, how are you, or do you have time to talk? Just the immediate assumption that my time was hers to claim. What's up? Megan has that conference in Denver next week, and I have my thing. Remember I told you about the spa weekend Rachel is planning? Anyway, we need someone to watch the kids Thursday and Friday. You'll have so much free time after you retire anyway, so I figured, what days exactly? I was already pulling up my calendar, already knowing what I'd find. Thursday and Friday, the 23rd and 24th. Is that a problem? Thursday the 23rd. The day I'd tentatively blocked for my first client meeting with Patricia. The day that would determine if this business was real or just an expensive fantasy. Actually, the kids are so excited to spend time with Grandma. Emma specifically asked if you could make those cookies you always make. Guilt, administered with surgical precision. This was Karen's specialty, making requests that were actually demands, wrapped in the language of family obligation and children's hopes. I'll have to check my schedule, I said. Silence. Then, your schedule? Diane, you're retiring in 2 weeks. What schedule? I just need to verify something. I'll call you back. I hung up before she could respond, my heart pounding like I just committed a crime. The thing was, I loved my grandchildren. Emma and Jacob were funny and weird and exactly the kind of kids who ask questions like, "Why is the sky blue?" and actually listen to the answer. I'd spent hundreds of hours with them over the years, maybe thousands, watching them while Megan worked late, picking them up from school when Karen was overwhelmed, being the safety net that let everyone else chase their own lives. But somewhere in all that helping, I'd stopped being a person with my own life to chase. I'd become grandma, the role, available, reliable, endlessly accommodating, a supporting character in everyone else's story. Janet appeared at my desk. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Karen wants me to babysit next week, same days as the Patricia meeting. So, tell her no." I can't just. Why not? Such a simple question. Such an impossible answer. I stayed late at the office long after everyone else had gone home. The cleaning crew came through at 6, the same two women who'd been here the entire time I had. We exchanged our usual greetings in Spanish and English, a hybrid language we'd developed over the years. They knew I was retiring. Had already planned a small party, which embarrassed me more than it should have. "Big plans?" Rosa asked, emptying my trash can. "Still figuring that out." She smiled, knowing. My mother, when she retired, she said she was busier than when she worked. All the things she wanted to do, finally time to do them. What did she do? Started a business, cleaning houses, then offices. Now she has 12 employees. Rosa laughed. She's 73 and still working more than me. I thought about that after she left, about the assumption that retirement meant stopping instead of starting, about how we talked about it like an ending instead of a beginning, about how everyone kept telling me to relax, like ambition had an expiration date printed somewhere on my birth certificate. My desk was covered with plaques and photos from 23 years, Employee of the Quarter, Team Leadership Award, pictures from company retreats and holiday parties, the accumulated evidence of a successful career that was ending in 14 days. None of it showed who I actually was. It showed who I'd been professional enough to be, competent enough to become, but the woman who wanted to start her own business, who stayed up late writing proposals and teaching herself new skills, who felt most alive when solving impossible problems. That woman was nowhere in these official records. I pulled out my laptop and opened the email from Patricia, read it again. "Really excited to work with you." Someone was excited to work with me. Not nostalgic about having worked with me. Not grateful for the years I'd given. Excited about what I could still do, still offer, still become. My fingers found the keyboard. I typed slowly, thinking through each word. "Patricia, I apologize for the delay. I'd like to schedule our initial meeting for Thursday the 23rd at 10 a.m. Does that work for your calendar?" I read it 3 times. My hand hovered over the trackpad. This was a simple email confirming a business meeting. This was also a declaration of war against every expectation my family had about who I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to want. I clicked send before I could stop myself. The relief was immediate and terrifying. I'd done it. I'd chosen myself. I'd picked the meeting over the babysitting, the business over the family obligation, my own life over the supporting role I'd been playing for decades. Now I just had to tell them. I opened a new message. To Karen, Paul, Megan. Subject line, update. I stared at the blank space where words should go. Typed and deleted. Typed and deleted. What was I supposed to say? "I've been lying to you by omission for 3 months. I have a whole life you don't know about because you never asked. I'm not who you think I am, and I'm tired of pretending." The cursor blinked. Accusatory. Waiting. Finally, I closed the laptop. Not yet. First, I needed to prove it to myself. At home, I found the box of business cards still sitting on my kitchen counter. I'd been too scared to open them, as if the act of seeing my name printed on cardstock would make everything too real to take back. I opened the box. They were perfect, simple, professional. Diane Forrester, strategic consultant. My phone number, email, website that Janet's daughter had designed for me. Physical proof that this was happening, had happened, would continue to happen. I lined them up on the table next to the portfolio. Added the outfit I'd bought specifically for client meetings, a blazer that made me feel competent instead of maternal. Set out my good pen, the one that wrote smoothly and looked expensive. My laptop open to the presentation I prepared for Patricia. This was the altar to a version of myself I was still becoming, or maybe returning to. I couldn't tell anymore. My phone buzzed. Karen. Haven't heard back. Need to confirm babysitting by tomorrow. I looked at the business cards, at the outfit, at the calendar with Thursday the 23rd circled in red, at the woman I could see reflected in my laptop screen, tired, scared, but also something else, something that looked almost like determination. My fingers typed before my brain could interfere. I can't that day. I have a work commitment. Send. 3 dots appeared immediately. Disappeared. Appeared again. Karen, what work commitment? You're retiring in 2 weeks. The truth sat in my throat, too big to swallow, too dangerous to speak. I could hear her voice in my head, the same tone she'd used at dinner. Act your age, Diane. Don't be ridiculous, Diane. What do you think you're proving, Diane? But I wasn't proving anything, not to them, not yet. Me. I'm starting a consulting business. I have my first client meeting that day. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared. Appeared and disappeared. Finally. Since when? Since I decided I was more than your idea of me. Since I realized I had another 30 years to live and refused to spend them being small. Since I understood that acting my age meant acting like myself, not like the grandmother-shaped container you needed me to be. Me. Since I decided to. I put the phone face down on the table, my hands shaking. The silence that followed felt enormous. No buzzing, no calls, no immediate response. Just the sound of my own breathing and the hum of the refrigerator and the knowledge that I'd just broken something that couldn't be unbroken. The phone stayed silent for 11 minutes. I counted, watching the clock on my microwave tick forward with agonizing precision. Each minute felt like permission and punishment simultaneously. Permission to breathe, punishment for daring. Then it exploded. The group text lit up like a Christmas tree. Karen first. Are you serious right now? Then Paul. Wait, what business? Then Megan, always trying to mediate. Mom, can we talk about this? I watched the messages pile up, each one a small knife disguised as concern. Karen worried about scams targeting retirees. Paul questioned my business acumen, which was rich coming from someone who'd asked me for a loan 6 times in the past decade. Megan wanted to know why I hadn't mentioned this before, as if I hadn't just tried to mention it at dinner before being laughed into silence. None of them asked what the business was. None of them asked if I was excited. None of them said congratulations. I typed and deleted a dozen responses. Explanations that turned into justifications that turned into apologies. Finally, I sent, "The business is real and already operational. I'm happy to share details when you're interested in listening, not managing." Then I did something I'd never done before. I muted the conversation. The silence in my kitchen was profound. I stood there, phone in hand, waiting to feel guilty, waiting for the familiar weight of having disappointed them to settle over my shoulders like a coat I'd worn so long I forgot it wasn't part of my body. But it didn't come. Instead, I felt light, terrifyingly light, like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long that its absence felt like falling. The next morning, Janet appeared at my desk before I'd even turned on my computer. She was carrying 2 coffees and wearing the expression of someone who already knew everything. "Karen called me last night," she said, setting the coffee in front of me. "Wanted to know if I knew about your little business venture." "What did you tell her?" "That it wasn't little and it wasn't a venture. It was a fully operational consulting firm with a signed client and a website?" Janet smiled. She didn't like that answer. I'm sure she didn't. She also wanted to know if I thought this was a good idea for someone your age. Janet's smile turned sharp. I told her I thought it was a good idea for someone any age, but particularly for someone with 23 years of expertise and nothing left to prove to mediocre family members. I laughed, surprising myself. "You didn't." "I did. Paul called an hour later. Wanted to know the same thing, except he was worried about your mental state." She used air quotes. "I told him the only concerning mental state was spending 5 decades letting people tell you what you're capable of." The coffee was perfect, the expensive kind from the place 3 blocks away that I never let myself get because it seemed frivolous. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. Someone needs to defend you to them, since you've spent your whole life defending them to everyone else." My phone buzzed. "Megan, can we talk? Just the 2 of us?" I showed Janet the message. She read it, then looked at me over her glasses. "Are you ready for that conversation?" "I don't know." "Then don't have it yet. You get to decide when you're ready, Diane. That's the whole point." But I called Megan during my lunch break anyway. Old habits and all that. She answered on the first ring. Mom, hi. Hi, honey. Silence. The kind that used to make me rush to fill it with reassurance, with explanations, with anything that would make her comfortable again. I waited. I'm confused, she finally said. You never mentioned wanting to start a business. Not once. I tried. At dinner. Before Karen laughed. She wasn't laughing at the business. She didn't know there was a business. None of us did. Would it have mattered? The question came out harder than I meant it. If I'd told you 3 months ago that I was starting a consulting firm, what would you have said? Another silence. I could hear her breathing, thinking, probably sitting at her desk in her corner office with the view of downtown. I don't know. Yes, you do. Mom, you would have been concerned. You would have suggested I take some time to adjust to retirement first. You would have worried that I was taking on too much stress. You would have found very gentle, very reasonable ways to tell me it wasn't a good idea. My voice was steady. That surprised me too. Am I wrong? I just want you to be happy. Do you? Or do you want me to be safely unhappy in ways you can understand? I heard her inhale sharply. That's not fair. Maybe not. But it's true. We sat with that for a moment. Traffic sounds filtered through her end of the line. On mine, the cafeteria hummed with its usual lunch crowd, people eating and laughing and living their lives without asking permission. Tell me about it, Megan said finally. The business? What made you want to do this? It was the first time anyone in my family had asked. The first time the question wasn't loaded with concern or doubt, or the assumption that I'd made a mistake. Just curiosity, just interest. I told her. About the client I'd signed, Patricia and her struggling logistics company. About the years of expertise I had in change management and digital transformation. About the website Janet's daughter had designed, the business plan I'd written, the 3 other potential clients waiting to see if I was serious. I didn't know you could do all that, Megan said quietly. You never asked what I did at work. None of you did. You knew I had a job, but you never asked what it actually involved. I wasn't being cruel, just honest. To you, I was Mom, Grandma, the person who watched the kids and brought cookies and showed up when you needed something. The work was just this thing I did during the day before coming back to my real role. I'm sorry. I'm not asking for an apology. I'm asking to be seen. She was quiet for a long time. Then, can I see the website? I sent her the link. Heard her clicking through it, the small sounds of her reading. Janet's daughter had done an incredible job. Clean design, professional photos, testimonials from former colleagues. My biography was 2 paragraphs of experience distilled into credibility, case studies from projects I'd led, a contact form that already had 6 inquiries sitting in it. Mom, this is really good. I know. No, I mean really good. This looks like an established firm, not a startup. Because I'm not a startup. I'm an experienced consultant who finally decided to work for herself instead of making other people rich. Megan laughed, and it sounded genuine. When did you get so confident? I've always been confident. You just never saw it because you only saw me in contexts where I was serving you. That landed hard. I could hear it in her silence. I have to go, she said finally, but I'm glad you told me. And I'm sorry I didn't ask sooner. Me too. After we hung up, I sat in my car in the parking lot, eating the sandwich I'd forgotten to eat during the call. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Karen, 2 from Paul. I didn't call them back. Instead, I opened my email and found a response from Patricia. 10 a.m. on the 23rd works perfectly. I'm attaching some background materials. Looking forward to meeting you in person. In person? Real? Happening? I spent the afternoon preparing for the meeting like it was the most important thing I'd ever done, because it was. Not because Patricia was going to make or break my business. She was one client and there would be others. But because this meeting represented something bigger than consulting fees and project timelines. It represented the moment I stopped performing a role and started living a life. Janet caught me at 4:30, printing out materials. You're going to kill it, she said. How do you know? Because you're good at this. Because you've been doing it for 2 decades. Because you actually care about solving problems instead of just collecting paychecks. She leaned against my desk. And because you're finally letting yourself want something. That night I laid out my outfit. The blazer, the blouse, the pants that made me feel like someone who got things done. I'd bought them 2 months ago in a moment of reckless hope, thinking maybe I'd actually have somewhere to wear them. Now I did. My phone rang at 9 o'clock. Paul. I almost didn't answer, then thought, better to get it over with. Diane, what the hell is going on? Hello to you too. Karen said you're refusing to watch the kids because of some business thing. Is this a real business or one of those pyramid schemes? I took a breath, counted to 3. It's a legitimate consulting firm. I have a client meeting on Thursday. That's why I can't babysit. Since when do you have meetings? You're retiring. I'm retiring from my corporate job. I'm starting my own business. Those aren't mutually exclusive concepts, Paul. Don't talk to me like I'm stupid. Then don't act like I'm senile. Silence. Then, what? You heard me. I'm 58, not 88. I'm not confused. I'm not having a crisis. I'm not being scammed. I'm starting a business because I'm good at what I do, and I'm tired of doing it for someone else's profit. But why didn't you tell us? I tried. At dinner, you all laughed. We weren't laughing at you. What were you laughing at then? He didn't have an answer. I waited, letting the silence do its work. Look, he finally said, I just think you should be careful. You've worked hard your whole life. You deserve to enjoy retirement, not stress yourself out with a startup. I am enjoying it. This is what enjoying it looks like for me. Maybe that's different from what you think it should look like, but it's my life, Paul. Not yours. I'm just trying to look out for you. I don't need looking out for. I need support. There's a difference. We hung up shortly after, not angry exactly, just tired. Tired of explaining myself. Tired of justifying my right to have ambitions at an age when I was supposed to be grateful for whatever scraps of relevance my family threw my way. Karen didn't call. She texted instead, I can't believe you're choosing work over family. I stared at the message for a full minute, then typed, I'm not choosing work over family. I'm choosing myself. If you can't tell the difference, that's your problem, not mine. I didn't send it. Too angry, too raw. Instead, I'm choosing both. They're not mutually exclusive. I can have a business and love my grandchildren. You've been doing it for years. Send. No response. I didn't expect one. Thursday morning arrived with the weight of everything I'd built toward for 3 months. I woke at 5, too nervous to sleep. Made coffee that tasted like victory and terror in equal measure. Put on the outfit I'd laid out, checked my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was someone I barely recognized. Not because she looked different. Same face, same graying hair I kept meaning to do something about, same lines around the eyes from 23 years of squinting at spreadsheets. But her expression was different. Certain, clear, present. I looked like someone who knew what she was doing. More importantly, I looked like someone who had the right to know what she was doing. The cafe where I'd scheduled the meeting was bright and modern, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs. I arrived 15 minutes early, ordered a sparkling water I didn't drink, and reviewed my notes for the 10th time. Patricia arrived exactly on time. Late 50s, professional but approachable, carrying the kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to fix something everyone else has decided is unfixable. Diane? Patricia, thank you for meeting me. We shook hands. Hers was firm, dry, confident. Mine probably was too, though I couldn't feel anything past the adrenaline. We talked for 90 minutes. She described her company, her father's company really, that she'd inherited along with 40 years of institutional resistance and outdated processes. She'd tried hiring from within, promoting younger employees, bringing in consultants who promised transformation and delivered jargon. Everyone tells me what I should do, she said. No one helps me figure out how to actually do it. That's because they don't understand legacy systems. They think you can just rip everything out and start fresh. I pulled out my laptop, showed her a case study from my previous work. But that's not how change works in established organizations. You have to build bridges, not burn them. Her eyes lit up. Exactly. Oh my God, exactly. We talked strategy. I asked questions about her team, her infrastructure, her father's original systems. She answered with the kind of detail that told me she understood her own business better than she thought she did. She just needed someone to help her see it clearly. I want to hire you, she said finally. Not for a one-time project. I want you on retainer? Is that something you'd consider? My heart hammered against my ribs. Yes, absolutely. We discussed terms, timeline, deliverables. She wanted to start immediately, next week if possible. I had 2 weeks left at my corporate job, but evenings and weekends were mine. I can start preliminary work now and go full-time after my retirement date, I said. The words felt surreal, my retirement date. The end of one thing, the beginning of another. We shook hands again. She pulled out her phone, transferred a deposit right there. My phone buzzed with the notification. Real money for real work that I was really doing. Thank you, she said. I can't tell you how good it feels to talk to someone who actually gets it. After she left, I sat in my car in the cafe parking lot, hands shaking, unable to quite process what had just happened. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. Not just signed a client, I'd proven to myself that this was real, that I was capable, that starting over at 58 wasn't delusional or desperate or any of the things I'd feared it might be. I called Janet. She answered with well? She wants me on retainer. Janet screamed. Actually screamed, loud enough that I had to pull the phone away from my ear. I knew it. I knew you'd kill it. When do you start? Next week. Preliminary work until I'm officially retired, then full-time after. Diane, I'm so proud of you. My eyes stung. Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't. You always believed in yourself. You just forgot how to listen to it. That evening, I texted Megan. First client meeting went well. Starting next week. She responded immediately. That's amazing, Mom. I'm proud of you. Then, a minute later, can we have coffee this weekend? I want to hear everything. I stared at that message for a long time. Want to hear everything? Not need to warn me or manage me or protect me from myself. Want to hear. I'd like that, I texted back. Karen didn't reach out. Neither did Paul. I tried not to let it bother me. Tried to remember that their discomfort with my growth said more about them than me. Tried to believe that their acceptance wasn't a prerequisite for my success. Mostly, I succeeded. My last day at the corporate job arrived without ceremony. There was a cake in the break room, a card everyone had signed, a gift certificate to a restaurant I'd never go to. People said nice things about my years of service, my mentorship, my contributions to the company. What are you going to do with all your free time? Someone asked, the same question I'd been hearing for months. I'm starting a consulting business, I said, loud, clear, unashamed. Really? That's amazing? Tell me about it. And I did. I told them about Patricia, about the other clients I'd signed in the past week, about the business plan I'd written and the website Janet's daughter had designed, about how terrified and exhilarated I was, about how it felt to finally give myself permission to want something. Marcus, the analyst I'd trained, pulled me aside before I left. I want to hire you, he said. Not now, but in a year or two when I move up. I'm going to need someone who knows how to navigate corporate politics without losing their soul. That's very specific. That's what you taught me. How to be good at something without sacrificing who you are. He smiled. I didn't realize until you were leaving that you'd been teaching me that the whole time. I drove home with a box of desk supplies and the nameplate Janet had given me weeks ago. Diane Forrester, principal consultant. It sat on my passenger seat, exactly where the portfolio had been that first night after the family dinner. Full circle. Different meaning. Saturday morning, I met Megan at the coffee shop near her house. She was already there when I arrived, 2 lattes waiting on the table. I ordered your usual, she said. Unless that's changed too? I smiled. Some things stay the same. We talked for 2 hours. Really talked. The way we hadn't since she was a teenager, asking my advice about college and boys and what kind of person she wanted to become. She told me about her promotion, the pressure she felt, the imposter syndrome that never quite went away no matter how successful she became. I look at you, she said, and I realize you probably felt that way too. But you never showed it. You always seemed so certain. I was terrified most of the time. I just got good at hiding it. Is that what you're teaching me now? To stop hiding it? No, I'm teaching myself that. You're just here to witness it. She laughed, then grew serious. I'm sorry I didn't see you. Really see you. I think I got so used to you being Mom, always there, always available, always putting us first, that I forgot you were a person with your own dreams. I forgot too, I admitted. For a long time, it was easier to be what everyone needed than to figure out what I needed. What changed? I thought about that. About the moment in the attorney's office when I signed the LLC papers. About Janet's insistence that I mattered. About Karen's laugh and the portfolio in my passenger seat and the business cards I'd been too scared to open. I realized I had maybe 30 more years to live, and I didn't want to spend them being small. Megan reached across the table, took my hand. "You're not small, Mom. You never were. We just weren't looking at the whole picture." 3 weeks later, Karen called. Not texted. Called. "I need to apologize," she said, no preamble. I waited. "I talked to my therapist about what happened, about how I reacted to your business. She asked me why your success felt threatening to me." Karen's voice was tight. I didn't have a good answer, or I had too many answers, none of them flattering. "Karen, let me finish, please." She took a breath. "I think I needed you to be a certain way. Settled, predictable, available when I needed you. And when you suddenly weren't that person anymore, I panicked. Because if you could change, if you could start over, then what excuse did I have for being stuck?" I hadn't expected that. "Are you stuck?" "Yes." God, yes. I hate my job. I hate that I've let myself become this bitter person who resents everyone else's happiness. I hate that when you told us about your business, my first thought wasn't good for her, but who does she think she is? "Karen, I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm just asking you to forgive me. And maybe, when you have time, to tell me how you found the courage to do this." We talked for an hour. Really talked, the way sisters should but rarely do. She told me about the career she'd given up when she got married, the resentment she'd buried under perfectionism and control. I told her about the years I'd spent being whoever everyone needed until I almost forgot who I actually was. "It's not too late," I said. "That's what I'm learning. It's never too late to start being yourself. I'm 45. I'm 58. So what?" She laughed, and it sounded almost hopeful. "Paul never apologized, but he did ask for my business card at Thanksgiving dinner. Said he had a friend whose company was struggling with the exact kind of problems I solved. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was acknowledgement, recognition, a small admission that maybe I knew what I was doing after all. I gave him 3 cards. "In case your friend wants to share my information." He took them, studied one carefully. "This is really professional, Diane." "That's because it is professional, because I am professional. I know, I didn't know you could do this. Neither did I, until I did." 6 months after that first client meeting, I was booked solid. 3 retainer clients, 2 project-based contracts, and a waiting list of companies that wanted to work with me. I'd had to turn down more work than I'd accepted, which felt both terrifying and incredible. Janet and I had lunch every Friday, a tradition we'd started to celebrate my first month of being fully self-employed. "Remember when you were afraid to tell Patricia yes?" she asked, stabbing a piece of lettuce. "I remember being afraid of everything." "And now?" "Now I'm still afraid. I'm just better at doing it anyway." She raised her glass of iced tea. "To doing it anyway. To doing it anyway." That evening I sat at my kitchen table under the pendant light, the same light that had illuminated my LLC papers 6 months ago, when they'd felt like evidence of either courage or delusion. Now they were just paperwork, necessary and ordinary. The magic wasn't in the documents. It was in the decision to believe I was worth the risk. The portfolio sat beside my laptop, still leather, still familiar, but now it was full of client contracts instead of unrealized hopes. Business cards with my name printed in clean professional font. A calendar color-coded with meetings and deadlines and project milestones. My phone buzzed. Emma, my granddaughter, on a video call. "Grandma, guess what?" "What, sweetheart?" "I told my teacher that my grandma runs her own business, and she said that's so cool, and she wants to know what you do." I smiled. "What did you tell her?" "I said you help people fix their companies when they're broken. Is that right?" "That's exactly right." "And I said you're really good at it because you're smart and you know a lot of stuff." "Thank you, Emma." "Can I tell the class about it for my family presentation?" Megan appeared in the frame behind Emma. "Only if Grandma says yes. It's her business to share." "I'd be honored," I said. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my kitchen, letting the moment settle. My granddaughter wanted to tell her class about my work, not about my cookies or my availability or my willingness to drop everything for everyone else, about my work, about who I was becoming instead of who I used to be, Outside, the motion sensor light clicked on, then off, the neighbor's cat probably, on its nightly rounds. The same cat I'd watched that first night after the family dinner when I'd been too scared to claim my own life. I looked at the portfolio one more time. Then I closed it, set it on the shelf with my other important documents, and opened my laptop to finish a proposal for tomorrow's meeting. The woman in the reflection of the dark window looked back at me. 58, graying, tired but alive. Acting her age, which meant acting like herself finally, which meant everything.